Hello, and welcome to this session on developing native mobile apps with Appframe and Flutter. Today we're going to give you a sneak peek on developing applications with Flutter, and if there's interest, we will give a more in-depth walkthrough in a follow-up session. And just for information, this is a recorded session, and it will be made available after the event. We will spend the time we have today mainly on presenting, but if you have any questions, please add them to the chat, and we will try to address them during or at the end of the session if there is time. Any questions that we can't answer, we will try to publish in the Appframe News Teams channel afterwards. So for now, I'll just hand it over to Viljus, and he will give us an introduction to Flutter development in Appframe.
Hello and welcome everyone again. So today we'll have a short introduction in regards to developing native mobile apps with Appframe and Flutter. So to start with, I would actually like to touch on what is Flutter. And it's a UI toolkit, completely open source and free to use, built by Google and written in Dart. And it's basically an alternative to what we know for cross-platform mobile application development, like Xamarin or React Native. And in a quick comparison, Flutter has a really active community with great support. It has rapid development cycles, staying up to date with the latest updates from each mobile platform. It's really easy to start with, has great documentation, providing easy adoption, for example, for Xamarin developers, for front-end developers, React Native developers, so to ease up the transition. And it's the newest kid in town, so to say. It's yet to mature to its fullest capacity. Diving deeper, why would one choose Flutter? A couple of reasons to do so. The primary one would be that it has stateful hot reload functionality, meaning while your app is running in debug mode on a physical device or an emulator, you can make changes in the code. And as soon as you save those changes, they are synced to your device, and you can see the effect immediately. So you omit the need to rebuild and redeploy the application for each change. This is especially useful when developing the UI. Moreover, it has a really expressive and fairly flexible UI. It's written declaratively, so it's easy to reason about. It has an extensive pre-built components library, which we'll be touching upon a bit later. And it was built with animations in mind. So some of the animations are really easy to use. It takes just a couple of lines of code, but you can always dive in deeper into the framework and chain animations together, go really crazy at it. Lastly, performance. Flutter tries to optimize as much as possible in their application engine. So just out of the box, you get really good performance using Flutter. In the graph on the right, we can see that for the past 12 months, Flutter has been increasing popularity and has even surpassed React Native. And just a quick mention, it has really good documentation and has some live examples utilizing what's called the Dart band. Going further, it's worth noting the Flutter widgets that are included into the SDK. So the main components that are used by the applications we have developed so far were the material ones, the default Android style. In the screenshot to the right, you can see some of the variations for a button you could use. It as well has Cupertino-styled widgets, which is the Apple's design guidelines, and it also offers just regular widgets for your, let's say, a text field, an input, and so on. So dialogues, animation widgets, just to give a quick sneak peek. Here are some of the categories one might have. Let's say we dive into material components. We have, let's say, app structure and navigation. And we see all the familiar components one might need to build the skeleton of an application. We have the buttons, inputs and selections, data unpickers, radio button sliders, just basically all the basic components. And using them, you can then combine those and build custom and more extensive components specifically for your app use case. And it's really an extensive library. In terms of Appframe integration, the Appframe team has been working hard to make it as easy as possible to start developing your first Flutter application against Appframe. So the two core packages that one would use is Appframe Authentication, which supports both R4 and 365. It basically handles authentication against an Appframe host and also supports configurable service providers. It's similar to what we have in Big Client. You can just choose a provider you want to log in against. Then the Appframe API, it uses the data API to retrieve, update, and just to do CRUD operations for your views, but you can also just as well use it for procedures. Developers in Appframe has been using Visual Studio Code to do the development with Flutter as its chosen IDE. Thus, we have developed an extension for it, which ties into the Appframe API and can generate Dart model class from your selected view. So that makes it really easy that you can you don't have to go to Appframe to fetch something. You can do everything directly from your editor. Moreover, the team also provides with theme data, which comes in two variants, light and dark material theme. It also includes standard material colors, and you can easily extend and modify themes to suit your existing application needs. And finally, we have the Appframe widgets. This is an ongoing collection of custom-built widgets taken from some of the applications we have built so far, where an equivalent couldn't be found in the available widgets from Flutter. And all of these packages are hosted on our private Flutter package server. Unfortunately, for the moment being, it's transitioning to a new host, so we have a temporary downtime. To showcase what it feels to be working on a mobile application in Flutter, we have a demo prepared, and the demo application is accessible by everyone. After the presentation, we can share the Git clone, so you can clone the repository on your local machine and start your first Flutter application and play around with it. It comes built in with material design and all of the Appframe packages. Just a second to bring up. So the demo application is basically a person's register. And we can see the code running here to display the hot reload, for example. Let's say we decide to change the button text to be something else, and as soon as I hit save, the button updates. So I don't need to actually redeploy the application. I can edit it live. It's worth noting to mention the Appframe Data API extension. To get it, you just go to the extension tab, and it should be enough just to type in Omega and install the extension. You will need to provide a host name you want to retrieve API list from, and you get this small window on the bottom. And this application currently is running against pims.devhosting.com. So let me just try and add it to my list. It can ask you for username and password, but there is a default setting that could be used for all of the other ones. So it's optional. So I have added here, and if I expand, I can see all the data resources available. We have the option to, if we right-click the host, we can add a new API to the host, or completely just remove the host if we no longer are, let's say, developing against it. And let's say I want to include the Swift system myPerson view in the application and fetch data from it. So I just click on the entry, and the Dark code generator takes care of it, and I get a complete model class with all the available fields and parameters set up. And it's automatically saved to the core models folder. So if I click save, it updates, and I have the myPerson model class. The Swift system myPerson. In addition, to get you started more easily with Flutter, it's worth noting that the Omega documentation has a ongoing list of articles to get you started. So for just getting set up your local machine to be able to run Flutter, to create an emulator, and to finally clone the repository to test with, we have written an article to get you started, which takes care of just installing all the requirements and installing the required extensions, including the API Explorer to be able to fetch data from the API. And finally, we have a guide for cloning the repository. And if you decide to use this repository as a starting point for your application, there are also some changes described that you need to make in order to make it your own completely. In addition, at the moment, we are using App Center from Microsoft for continuous deployment of applications. And there is also App Center.ms integration guide. The demo application is mostly set up for you. So just minor steps remaining. go through. And App Center basically takes care of building and deploying your application to either test groups, to beta channels on respectively Google Play Store and App Store from Apple. And you can also submit release builds for respective release channels. That's more or less it from me for the introduction. I will hand it over to Jan Leon.
Yeah, thanks, Julius. So in Omega, we have several teams working on developing some of these mobile applications. And some of these you could see on the PowerPoint that we presented in the start. So for instance, the Omega timesheet application, where Omega employees can record their hours and send timesheets for approval. This is available both in Android and iOS, so you can go and install it now. We also have an HMS reg application, which is used for registering personnel arriving at and leaving work locations. And then the last one we had was the PIMS execute application, which is a new one, which is an app for handling, for material handling, that gives some live material status to projects. And this one can be used both on iOS and Android phones, but it can also be installed on offshore handheld devices that are certified. And lastly, we can also mention that we have just started developing a new Flutter application for mechanical completion and commissioning, where we will be able to complete checklists and register punch items. Then we can see if there's any questions. There's no questions that I can see. Yeah. So thank you all for attending the session. And as Julius mentioned, you can find the documentation on docs.omega365.com or appframe.com. And feel free to contact us if you need some assistance in getting started. Thanks.